I'm currently descending Black Butte Trail. I went up, now I'm going down. Pan over and show off our friends, North and South Sister. This one right here is Mount Washington. Today is June 7th, 2022. This is one of the few trails for its elevation because you start at 3,000, go up to 6355. It's accessible end of May, beginning of June. So I said today's June 7th, and this is accessible typically 3rd or 4th week of May, which is pretty unusual for this elevation. Something about the angle of the slopes with the sun has an aggressive melt, which is good if you want to come up here and enjoy this area. So there's two ways to do this hike here in Deschutes National Forest. You can do what I'm doing today, the long version, the road less traveled, and you park at the lower trailhead and you go 9.8 miles and up 3,400 feet. The 9.8 miles is pretty basic. That's a pretty normal, standard and moderate hike, but the up 3,400 feet, that is rough. It's not outside my capability, and I did it because I'm on the way down, but it is exhausting. It is tiring. Your legs get rubber going up 3,400 feet. Since it's 9.8 miles, it's up 4.9. So the 3,400 feet is up 4.9 miles. So that's a pretty decent incline for the entire way. It's a feel the burn hike. It's a stair stepper type hike. It's just nonstop uphill for hours. Doesn't that sound like fun? So if you don't want to do the version I did today, which is called the historic Black Butte Trail, it's the longer version, then you can do the shorter one where you come up to the upper trail. There is a forest road that brings you up a bit. That knocks it from 9.8 to 3.8 and knocks it from 3,400 to 1,600. So as you can see, it over halves the length and elevation gain. That's what most people do. I'd say the only drawbacks of doing that are the road itself is pretty sketch. I think it is potholes and rutted. I've done it twice before successfully in a midsize SUV. So there's a small chance you'll damage your vehicle just because the road is awful. And two, it's a tiny parking lot. Tiny may not be the right word. It's a small parking lot. 8, 10 vehicles, that kind of a thing. So there is a chance, and I've seen people complain about it on all trails, that they'll go up the sketch road and have their car rattling, get up the parking lot, and it is full. So if you're gonna come like on a Sunday at like noon, I would personally not even recommend trying to go up to the upper, because decently high chance that the parking lot is already full and now you're incurring the negative impact or risk to your vehicle going up a pretty sketchy road for no reason because you can't park. So, or I guess you go up there, wait till somebody leaves if you want to be patient. So, as I said, I've gone up there twice with the midsize SUV and made it. You see Subarus up there, a lot of SUVs up there. So, I mean, it's not, I don't want to oversell how sketchy the road is. It's not like some, you need a 4-wheel drive, high clearance to make it. It's not that bad. But it's not a road I would want to repeatedly do. It's kind of right on that red line for me with my midsize SUV, where like my car's rattling and it's making sounds, and it's just, I get a little worried I'm breaking it while I'm going on the road, and kind of right at that red line for me where I'd rather avoid that road if possible. So also, I had never done the full version before, and that was taunting me with its allure. So I did it today. That's a bucket list type thing. I don't know if I would do this hike again, keeping it real. That is a bit of some people like to call these punishment hikes, and where that might be an overstatement. I don't know if it's a punishment hike. It's a rough hike. It's up 3,400 feet straight up. So this is the best section because you got the ridge line, but the first half of it is just forest. It's pretty forest. It's Ponderosa Pine, Deschutes National Forest. So I'm not knocking the forest. It is pretty, and I did enjoy the entire hike, but it's not like it's legendary views. There are some hikes in other states or in Oregon as well, where for that kind of elevation gain, you're way up in the mountains in an Alpine Wonderland environment. And I'm not knocking this. This is beautiful. This is a high quality hike that I had to recommend, but it isn't my favorite hike in the area. The reason I'm doing this today, June 7th, is A, because the snow melted probably about 2 weeks ago, week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And two, there's no mosquitoes. A lot of people don't appreciate that the Cascades, as far as a mountain range, is actually one of the most mosquito-rific ground zero forests in the entire country and the entire world. So there's some parts of the Cascades, particularly in Oregon and Washington, where it's very waterific, bog and swamp and river and lake, that the mosquitoes are just hordes of you know, micro vampires just trying to wreck you. For that reason, it's kind of the paradox of Oregon and Washington is, you know, I've been doing all these spring hikes all these river hikes all spring, enjoying them, kind of getting ready for summer, which is prime time. If you're a wilderness adventurer like I am, summer is going to be your window, particularly the back half of summer, the Alpine window. I consider maybe like August 15 to October 15. So I did this the hard way. You ever heard in a movie, they're like, we could do this the easy way, we could do this the hard way. Well, I picked the hard way. Elevation is always harder than distance. So I'm not gonna lie, it's a bit challenging. It's rewarding. I'm glad I did it. I made it, and it was never in question I was gonna make it. I knew this was well within my capability. I've done harder before, so went as planned, but typically, if you got to hike that long, no matter how good you are at wilderness adventuring, you're going to get a little wrecked. It's going to fatigue you, so I will definitely feel this tomorrow. I'll feel this when I get back to my car and my muscles tighten up, and then I have an hour 10 drive back to home, to Madras. I will stiffen up a bit. My muscles will definitely feel it, and then tomorrow when I wake up, I'll probably feel it, but well worth it. Felt great. Kind of a bucket list thing. I don't know if I would keep doing this glutton for punishment hike, 3,400 feet straight up, incline the entire way. I don't know if I do this for fun per se over and over again, but I did want to cross it off my bucket list, and it was a good warm-up hike for later in the year. So I felt good in that front. I wasn't the only glutton for punishment. There was 2 other cars at the trailhead, so a couple other sadistic people also decided to go up 3,400 feet. So it's kind of interesting how this is segmented. From the lower, you go up 3 miles and 1,800 feet. Then you get to the upper trailhead. A little demoralizing to put that much effort in, and now you're just where everybody else is starting if they drove higher. Then you go up another 1.9 miles, another 1,600 feet. That's how you get your 4.9 miles up and 3,400 feet. Thankfully, that portion of this hike has completed. Now I'm going back down. You do have to be careful going down. Pretty easy to get in rubbery leg, jello leg mode, but you gotta watch your step and make sure you don't take a tumble on a rock or root or something. So I am enjoying the much faster speed of going down than it was coming up. I'm also being careful because you don't want to fall. This is one of those, I call it 2/3 hikes, where the first 2/3 of the hike is up as far as time, and then the final third is down because you can kind of fly down. So here this is the upper parking lot, upper trailhead parking lot. This is not where I parked. This is where all the people who did the 3.8er parked. I did the 9.8er. So I got another 3 miles past this, but it's all very similar to this. It's just going to be entirely downhill in the forest, so kind of get a little bit in autopilot. We're past the ridges where you could actually fall off a cliff. Now we're just kind of hiking through Deschutes Forest proper amongst these epic ponderosa pines. And we're back to the trailhead. I think I actually know whose RV that is. I won't focus on it too much. Very sweet Canadian people actually gave me a water refill because they knew I was low, and that was very nice of them. So I think that's their RV. Very nice people. I really like them a lot. And here's a picnic table and rock pile. And now we're doing a Black Butte Trail number 4026. Please note that 4026, I'm just joking, that means nothing. And then lower trailhead, 3 miles. So I got 3 miles back to my lower trailhead. I'm 6.8 miles in my 9.8 mile hike, but more importantly, I've done my entire 3,400 foot climb. So my 3 miles are all downhill through a forest in mop-a-code. So I don't think it'll take me that long. I'll go pretty fast. General rule of thumb is you count 2 miles an hour on steady ground, but I can get faster than that, sometimes 2.5 or 2.6 or even 3 miles if I'm going real fast. I'm gonna say I'll be back in about an hour 15, hour 20, just going at a casual pace. So we are on the back end of this hike, and we'll be back to our trailhead soon. Basically, you climb straight up, feel the burn, stairmaster style, and get to the Black Butte, enjoy the butte. The overlook area is beautiful. You get to see 9 awesome mountains, particularly from a well-crafted viewpoint area with placards and elevations. And then you hike back down. As a glutton for punishment, I actually over doubled the length of this hike. You can do it from the lower or upper trailhead. Most people do it from the upper trailhead. It makes it 3.8 miles and 1,600 feet elevation gain. But by doing it from the lower trailhead, the old historic Black Butte, I made it 9.8 miles and 3,400 feet elevation. So if you go to the bottom and start versus the top, you do over twice what the people in the upper section do. And a lot of them seem wrecked at the end. So puts it in perspective. This is a legit hike. I will say, if you're an avid wilderness adventurer, you probably know your limits and capabilities, and maybe this is a hike you could do. If you don't know, if you're not an avid wilderness adventurer and you don't know your capabilities, I would actually recommend not doing this for safety, because you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're climbing up 3,400 feet across 4.9 miles. That is rough. It's like the worst stairmaster in the world. And unless you know you can do it, unless you've done that kind of stuff before, if that's kind of a peer hike for you, you've done other hikes. I've done other hikes harder than that, so I knew I could do it. Unless you know you can do it, I would caution bravado carrying the day for you and you trying something that might be outside your capability. That's not fun for you, and it may not even be fun if you need help for anybody else. So enthusiasm's good, but you want to work within your limits and build up to stuff. If you've never done this area, unless you're very confident in your skills, I would definitely start with the upper and see how that goes. That seems to wreck a lot of people just on its own. As I said, the lower is over twice as hard. So start with the upper, see how that goes. If that kind of wrecks you, then you got a good baseline of where you're at. And then maybe over time, you can build up to doing the lower if the mood ever suits you, if you ever feel so inclined. I kind of like it as a bucket list hike. It's not a hike I'm going to do repeatedly. I mean, it's pretty. This forest is beautiful, Deschutes National Forest here in Central Oregon. So I'm enjoying the forest. I'm enjoying the ponderosa pines. And of course, I loved the views up at the top. The last half mile, you get onto a ridge line, which gives you panoramic views of several good mountains. And then you get up to the top, and it's amazing. So the payoff is there at the top. But as far as doing it from the lower trailhead, as I said, that's 6 of the 9.8 miles and 18 of the 3,400 feet. This is beautiful. Big Devil, there's Mount Washington. But I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze as purely a beauty play. I like this forest, but I don't know if this forest is worth adding 1,800 feet elevation in 6 miles. Because 9.8 and 3,400 is a bit of a trek. It's a good training hike for later in the year if you plan on doing some alpine exploring. So for that reason alone, it might be worth doing, but it's purely a beauty play. I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze for this bottom half, keeping it real. That said, though, if you're passing through the area or if you're a resident of Central Oregon, I do think this is a good bucket list hike. I think you got to do the lower trailhead to the Black Butte at least once in your life if possible. So, as I said, this is my first time doing the full Monty, the full enchilada, and it worked. I did it. Never in question, but it felt good to check it off my mental box. But I've done the upper one a couple other times previously. It's my third time in the area. This is beautiful. I mean, look at these ponderosa pines, this brushery. It's just pretty incredible. I like how they've groomed this trail so that you always have like these ponderosa pines, like the one I'm coming up to right now, like on the trail. Kind of cool. And just when you're passing this ponderosa, you can see off in the distance there's another ponderosa on the trail. So they did a good job designing this trail to have some beauty along the way that I would appreciate and give them credit for. It feels good to be in the final quadrant, the last 3-mile stretch back down to the car, final 1,800 foot decline, descension down to my automobile. You can get to a certain elevation gain where no matter how good of a hiker you are going to feel it. 3,400 feet is enough that could have an impact on you. I can definitely feel it right now, and when I get in the car and drive home, I'm sure my muscles will tighten up, and I'm sure one of those nights where you stiffen up on the couch and then in the morning you wake up a little stiff, one of those. Not anything, I won't be wrecked, but I'll definitely feel some reverberations from this hike later tonight and tomorrow morning. But I'm sure by tomorrow afternoon my muscles will have released. I'm 42 years old, so maybe that factors into it. Everybody's got a different arc on how they bounce back from these things.